Greetings, fellow philosophers. I want to go over briefly some of the questions that were contained in the reading this week and highlight some of the key ideas that I'd like for you to make sure you remember from the reading. Because they do form the foundation for a lot of what we're going to be talking about later in the course, and also that they will help you write the paper that you'll be writing at the end. But more importantly, I think they're just remarkable ideas that can inform a lot of the decisions that you make in the course of living your life. Some key ideas from the reading. One of them was this idea of what is the goal of life? What is the aim of all human activity? And Aristotle is quite clear about it. The idea is that individuals strive to be happy. That when you unpack all motivation, at the heart of it, at the core of it, the foundation is this desire, this drive to be happy. And when you peel back any particular activity and go deep enough, you'll find this at its heart. For example, why did you get up in the morning? Well, you don't think you got up in the morning to be happy. You might think you got up in the morning because you had to go to work. Well, why did you go to work? Well, we go to work for a lot of reasons. One, because we enjoy our work. We like being productive. We want to make money. Well, why do you like to be productive, make money, and so on? Well, because you want to be satisfied or you want to buy nice things. Well, why do you want to do that? Well, if you keep going backwards far enough and get to the irreducibly singular idea, it's to be happy. And there's nothing else beyond that. And Aristotle makes that quite clear, that is at the end of it all, that's the goal. You don't ask yourself, why do you want to be happy? You want to be happy because your soul desires to be happy. It's deeply satisfying to be happy. So what is this happiness, and how would you define it? Well, that's a critical part of Aristotle, this idea that that happiness is what we seek for. Has to be unpacked a little bit, because it's not just, again, to be, to enjoy a birthday party or to have a nice outing. For Aristotle, happiness is this deep, soul-quenchingly satisfying sense of yourself and of life. Again, it's not just an emotion. It's a deep and settled sense that life is good and that you've lived it well and you've been able to make a contribution to it in some insignificant and important way. You've done the right thing in your life and the choices that were presented to you. So it can't be something that just happens in a moment. And so this famous saying of his that one swallow does not a summer make, the idea that swallows return from the south, and they migrate at the beginning of spring. Well, that just because a swallow shows up doesn't mean it's summer. And the same thing, just because you have one nice day doesn't make you happy or blessed. It's the result of a lot of good days and good that you made. But what gets in the way? Well, there's this other element in us. He calls it a rational element that works against reason. I sometimes call it rational irrationality. We say things like, well, it seemed good at the time to do something. So we do something and it turns out very poorly for us, and we go back and look at it and we say oftentimes, well, what was I thinking? But what we were thinking is we weren't thinking clearly enough. And so even though something seemed right at the time, it actually can end up being quite disastrous for us. And so we'll run into this later in later philosophers who will talk about this part of us that looks like it works against us. In Scripture, we talk about it as being the sin nature, this part of us that acts against our best interests and acts against those things that actually would do us good. And we are to fight against that part of us, or the animal part, as Kant will talk about. So anyway, this idea, though, that there's something in us that needs to be resisted and not listened to, not paid attention to, is certainly something that Aristotle was aware of. So how do people become good and excellent? Well, this is by habit. You do things over and over and over again, and eventually you become good. And so when you're training kids, it doesn't matter if they want to do the right thing or they understand the right thing. They keep doing the right thing over and over and over and over again until it becomes habitual. Same with us as adults. We do things over and over and over again. We finally form good habits. And we have to break bad habits by doing the right thing over and over and over again. People become good. So this idea we'll talk about a little bit more towards the end of this presentation, but this idea of the golden mean being being the guide to moral excellence is a significant Aristotelian contribution. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a few. But this is difficult and not easy to do. And so it's rare, it's praiseworthy, it's laudable, and it's very noble to be good in this way. So going back to this idea of the mean, of the golden mean, why do we do things a little bit in excess one time and a little bit towards deficiency in another? Well, again, we'll talk about the golden mean a little bit more in a little bit, but the idea that there are two extremes and it's very difficult to hit the middle. So you understand what is on both edges of the continuum, and sometimes you're a little bit more towards one side than the other, and sometimes you are in excess and sometimes you are in deficiency, knowing that as you go back and forth that you'll over the course of time you'll act in a way that's more wise, that's good. So one example of that would be, think of the virtue of kindness. Too much kindness is maybe enabling or indulgence, and too little kindness is being harsh and being cruel, and there's a nice sweet spot somewhere between the two, and hard to hit it. So maybe sometimes you may be a little harder on people, sometimes you're a little softer on people. You kind of go a little bit back and forth, knowing that ultimately you're kind of hovering around the nice sweet spot between the two. These key terms are ones we'll be coming back to over and over again throughout the course. So I want to highlight them. Telos is, we get a lot of our words, a lot of our English words have this as a prefix: telescope, television. It means the end of things. In Aristotle, it means the purpose for which a thing was created. An acorn was created to become an oak tree. Individuals were created to become a certain kind of entity, a certain kind of being. And so Aristotle envisions that humans, when perfected, look a certain way, and that we are to be on that continuum, and that we are to live our lives in a certain way that ends up developing human beings that look a certain way. So he would say that you can't just choose for yourself how to be happy. You can't be a happy drug dealer, for example, because that would defy your telos. Your telos isn't to be somebody who contributes to the demise of others. You can't be happy and be that kind of a person. You can't be a kind of a person who disregards the implications of the decisions of your life. And so this idea of you are created to become a certain kind of way is a critical part of what is happiness? Happiness is eudomonia. Greek word, it means more than just being happy, more than just having a nice time at the beach. No, it's this deep, soul-quenching kind of an experience that you have that comes from living life well. And how do you live it well? Well, you live it well by making good choices, by making excellent choices. And so day after day, situation after decision, situation after situation, decision after decision, you make good and excellent choices. And over time, then develops a particular kind of person. The complete life, then, at the end, as we've mentioned before, it's not just a fleeting moment. It's the deep, satisfying life that comes after time. Not necessarily at the end of life, it doesn't wait that long, but after good over time. And these choices are difficult. It's easier to get a question right on a test than it is to do the right thing. So that moral excellence is a more critical development than intellectual development. We should want to develop intellectually, obviously, but more difficult to do the right thing and to be the right kind of person. So we've mentioned we're going to come back to this idea of the golden mean. You have an activity that will focus in on this. Here's the section from the reading. And this idea that virtue exists between two extremes, one extreme being the excess and the other extreme being the defect, is how a virtue is described. Best example of that is this idea of courage. What is courage? Well, courage exists between two extremes. One is the excess of courage, which is rashness. The other is cowardness, which is no courage at all. And what is courage? Well, It depends on the situation. If you are in battle and you have to take a hill, well, maybe courage actually is a little too rash. You join your comrades and you storm the hill and put your own life at risk. That would be courage because of the importance of the battle or importance of the war. You might put your life at risk. What's at stake? But if you're walking down the street and somebody asks for your wallet or your purse, you just give it to them. It'd be stupid to fight over that. So what is courage? Well, courage is between the two extremes depending on the circumstances. And you can talk a little bit about a lot of different virtues in the same kind of way. One last idea that I want to just mention, that Aristotle's thoughts, you see him come up in all kinds of situations, at least I do. Daniel Pink, a very popular author, uses Aristotelian thought at the foundation of what he considers to be the three primary values in an organization. This idea of being autonomous, of mastering something, and living for a purpose. You got this from Aristotle, whether he knew it or not. Those are foundational thoughts that were written about and talked about 2,500 years ago. So with that, just a brief summary of the important points of the ethic. As I mentioned in our introduction, I believe that the kinds of things that Aristotle talk about are relevant to today, and I certainly use these ways when I frame decisions, when I talk to people about decisions. Talk about Aristotle and some of these thoughts that we just talked about, and I think that they have a great deal of relevancy for us today.